Good morning. My name is Mark Krebsbach. I'm a graduate of Class 48 and the chair of the 27th Annual World Ag Expo Benefit Breakfast for the California Ag Leadership Foundation. I would like to thank all of you for attending our virtual breakfast. We are proud to say that we have 400 registered viewers for today's program. This event is hosted by the alumni of the region to raise funds for the foundation. More than $1.7 million has been raised in the past 27 years. Due to the generosity of the insurance partners and event donors, we are excited to be able to donate another $100,000 this year. This is truly a testament to the dedication and the commitment of the individuals who support the California Ag Leadership Program. I would also like to give a major thank you to Valley PBS for serving as our media sponsor. Valley PBS graciously provided all the media production for this event, including the studio and the team, to ensure we have a successful event, and we sincerely appreciate the partnership. Now I'd like to introduce our MC, who will lead us through the rest of the program. Emily Rooney is the president of Ag Council of California. Ag Council advocates for 15,000 farmers across the state of California, ranging from small farmer-owned businesses to some of the world's best-known brands. Emily works on statewide policy issues for her members and has been at Ag Council for over a decade. Prior to her work there, she used to work for the California Farm Bureau. In addition, Emily is the host of the Capital Farm Connection podcast, which provides policy updates on environmental, water, labor, and other issues impacting agriculture. Emily is a graduate of Class 39 and currently sits on the Foundation Board of Directors.
Welcome to our guests. I'm honored to participate today in such a worthwhile event. This has been a year of many firsts. Who could have imagined just 1 year ago at the farm show we would be holding a virtual breakfast due to a global pandemic? The challenges we have faced as individuals and as the agricultural industry is evidence of our need for the California Ag Leadership Program. In order for our industry to survive, we must be resilient in our response to challenges like COVID-19. Ag Leadership helped prepare me to face the daily challenges from the California State Legislature. In fact, dealing with a global pandemic seems fairly easier in comparison. But seriously, thanks to the supporters of Ag Leadership, the future of this program is secure and available for future generations of agricultural leaders. We have an action-packed agenda ahead of us today, which includes comments from the Ag Leadership CEO, Dwight Ferguson, who will provide us a brief update on the happenings of the program, a donation presentation to Ag Ventures, and a keynote presentation by best-selling author Ross Bernstein. The event team decided to invite Ross to return as this year's speaker because he has such a strong connection with our audience, and we thought it would be a great opportunity to follow up on last year's lessons regarding leadership and visit the challenges dealing with COVID from a leadership perspective. We are thankful he is back and chosen to dedicate some additional time to us. Before we get started, as a reminder, this is a webinar, and we have the opportunity for Q&A at the end, so feel free to put any questions you have in the chat, and we'll collect those questions and answer them as time permits at the end of the session. Questions can be addressed to both Ross and Dwight. Dwight joined the California Ag Leadership Program as President and CEO in October 2020, following 30 years of senior leadership positions at top produce and floral companies. He was most recently President and CEO of Nature Right Farms in Salinas. He has also been active with several industry and trade associations, most notably the Produce Marketing Association, where he's currently serving as board chairman. Dwight has been on board for just a few months, and I can personally attest that he's already heavily engaged, walking the foundation through strategic planning, overseeing programmatic changes with Class 50 due to COVID, and helping create a strategic path forward as we climb out of this pandemic. He's also been on a bit of a listening tour, meeting with several alumni, staff, directors, and the education team, and absorbing everything we have to say. Dwight, congratulations on joining the team, and thank you for your leadership. I will hand it over to you for your remarks.
Thank you, Emily. I'm delighted to be here today. I also want to thank you, Mark, and the entire World Ag Expo Breakfast Committee for the great work you've done in putting this event together. It's not the kind of breakfast gathering we were used to, but again, you chose a great speaker in Ross, and the dedication you and your sponsors continue to show the foundation is inspiring. And speaking of those sponsors, I'd like to take a minute to recognize the very generous companies that provide much of the financial support for this event, and in turn, do so much for us at the foundation. Our platinum sponsor is again the Zenith, and I'd like to recognize and thank Chairman Jack Miller, President Kari Van Gundy, Chief Operating Officer Davison Patiz, and Executive VP John Lindsay for all they've done and continue to do for us. Our gold sponsors are Nationwide and Scott Elliott, along with State Fund and Scotty Luong, and our silver sponsors are Travelers and Brian Young, and Western Growers and Matt Jones. Rounding out this very generous group are our bronze sponsors of BHHC and Margaret Hartman, Chubb Agribusiness and Rick Russell, ICW and Patricia Hansen, and Gallagher and Jim Buckley and Glenn Dries, along with everybody at RCIS. Thank you again for all your support and your generosity. Prior to joining Ag Leadership last October, I had the privilege of working in the produce and global fresh flower industries for roughly 30 years. That experience, along with my current role as chairman of the PMA, has enabled me to realize the importance of thoughtful, positive leadership and how that translates into real value for employees, customers, and communities. In the 4 months that I've now been with the foundation, I've consistently been impressed not only by the support from our stakeholders, but especially by the activities and the accomplishments of our 1,300 alumni. Add to that the dedication of our board under new chairman Mike Young and our professional and very capable staff, including new Executive Vice President Abby Taylor Silva, and you can see why I'm excited to be part of this team. Together, we're all humbled and very happy to be stewarding an organization that nurtures, educates, and inspires the leaders that California Ag needs to survive, thrive, and truly make a difference. We're also very busy right now, despite all the challenges associated with COVID-19. Our education team remains very much engaged with Class 50, and lifelong learning programs continue to expand, most notably in the form of First Friday programming. We're also in the midst of planning for our future and identifying ways to ensure even greater impact and progress in years to come. As many of you know, the application process for Class 51 is now open, and we will be accepting applications through April 26. Together with our 4 partner universities, Cal Poly Pomona, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, Fresno State, and UC Davis, we deliver a comprehensive, diverse, and high-impact curriculum designed to improve critically important leadership skills. I invite you to consider whether you or someone you know is ready to join us in a lifelong learning journey by applying to the California Ag Leadership Program. I urge you to visit our website, agleaders.org, for the online application and to learn more about the program. Emily, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dwight. As a reminder, Dwight will be available for questions at the end of the program, so get your questions into the chat now. I would like to again thank our event sponsors you see on the rolling slides. Thank you for your continued support of the California Ag Leadership Program. And thank you again to PBS for your hard work and partnership in this event. I'm happy to present the committee's annual contribution to Ag Ventures. The Ag Ventures Learning Center and Ag Museum in Tulare provides modern, interactive, hands-on exhibits where students can learn about what it takes to produce the food and fiber we rely on and discover the role agriculture plays in our everyday lives. Your continued support of the Ag Leadership Breakfast not only helps further the mission of Ag Leadership, but also supports Ag Ventures as well. This year, Ag Ventures will receive a donation in the amount of $2,000. Normally, the committee presents one of those giant checks, but since we're virtual, you just saw a check, or you can imagine a giant check right now with $2,000 on it. We look forward to presenting another check to Aggie the Ag Ventures cow next year live at the World Ag Expo. And now I am thrilled to welcome back our speaker today, the best-selling author of nearly 50 sports books. He's an award-winning, Hall of Fame, peak performance business speaker who has keynoted conferences on all 7 continents, and has been featured on CNN, CBS This Morning, ESPN, and Fox News, as well as the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and USA Today. His mission today is to get us all thinking differently about how we can raise our games to the next level. And now for our guest speaker, Ross Bernstein.
Thank you, Emily, Dwight, and Mark. It is great to be back with you. I so wish we all could have been together at the World Egg Expo. It is minus 40 degrees today in balmy Minneapolis, where I live, so I really wish we were together. But hey, it's all about the pivot, and we're here virtually, so I'm really excited to be with you guys. Welcome to my worldwide headquarters, or as my mother likes to say, my basement. These are definitely interesting times, but you can see I'm a sports fanatic. I've been a working member of the media for the past 20 years here in Minnesota, working very closely with my Vikings, Twins, Wild, Wolves, Gophers. I've had a lot of misery over the past 2 decades, as you might, if you know anything about my teams, but it's given me a very unique perspective being in the locker room and the press box and the dugout and the sideline. And I've been able to meet some pretty interesting folks along the way. Now, my program for you this morning, Wearing the Sea, it's all about leadership ideas. I was able to interview over 500 different coaches and captains for my best-selling book called Wearing the Sea. If you remember last year when I did my program, The Champions Code, I talked about Wayne Gretzky, who I had a full-blown stage 5 man crush. Remember I told you about Wayne? This guy actually enjoyed assists more than goals because he was a servant leader. He was a giver. That's what being a great leader is all about. So I'm going to share with you a whole bunch of stuff today that's going to challenge you to think differently. So my first question to you is, you know, as leaders, as emerging leaders, why would someone choose to be influenced by you or to be led by you? You know, I mean, people have lots of choices. There's an old saying, people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. So how do you lead? What's unique about you? What are the differentiators that really set you apart from everyone else? My mission this morning is to take a few things that aren't your business and make them your business. So I'm going to share with you 8 ideas to drive morale, generate momentum. Momentum's a living, breathing thing. It's lightning in a bottle. How do you keep it? How do you sustain it? We see it in sports, we see it in business, we see it in sales. And today it's going to be fun. I had a chance to interview a bunch of the people that I got to come out and spend some time with last year for the Expo. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to come back this year, sadly, but we're going to do a recap, a little where are they now, and it's going to be exciting. So tune in, buckle up, pour yourself a mimosa. Let's dive in. Number 1, lead with respect. Why? Because reputation isn't what you say about you, it's what everybody else says about you. That is Harmon Killebrew, one of my childhood heroes. I miss him. We lost him to esophageal cancer several years ago, and now he's up above rooting on my Twins. But man, what a beauty. I love Harmon. You know, I just told you about Wayne Gretzky. Wayne was a servant leader. Wayne would never throw his teammates under the bus. No way. Harmon was the opposite. Harmon was a guy with no filter who actually really enjoyed throwing his teammates under the bus. It wasn't a popular thing to do, but it was the right thing to do. And as leaders, you need to surround yourself with what we call clubhouse guys. You got clubhouse gals too, your veterans, to make sure people are making the right decisions, to make sure people lead with respect. Now, Harmon didn't get to wear the C in his jersey like Gretzky did, but make no mistake, he was the captain in practice, making sure guys worked hard enough. You'd feel it if you weren't working hard enough. He was the captain on road trips, making sure guys got enough sleep and showed up in time for curfew and didn't do anything to embarrass the team. He just always found ways to provide value to the organization. See, Harmon's contract wasn't measured in home runs and RBIs like all the other players. His contract was measured in being the voice of reason. Harmon's job was to make sure that little problems didn't turn into big problems. Harmon was a mole. You got a mole? I mean, you're here with us right now. Do you really know what's going on back at the office? I mean, in baseball, the managers and coaches have to know what's going on. I mean, they can't be everywhere at the same time. I mean, baseball is a crazy game. It's 162 games, and there's so much drama in baseball. You're managing huge egos. You walk into a dugout, you got blacks, whites, Jews, Muslims, Latinos, Dominicans, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Venezuelans, Cubans, Japanese, Taiwanese, Koreans, Australians. It's nuts in there. Yeah, you got a 4-game road trip to Toronto, Boston, New York, LA. You got even more drama. This clique, well, they want to go out to dinner just with the cool kids. This clique, they want to talk that language. These guys want to listen to this music in the locker room. This guy hates that guy. This guy's chasing that guy's girlfriend. Look, if you're a manager in baseball, you ain't got time to deal with all that drama, because in baseball, they got what they call a shared vision. And what that means is that when your team sucks, they fire everybody. That's just how it is. There's no golden parachute for the dude at the top. You get 2, maybe 3 years to win. That's the metric, or you're gone. So managers learned they got to lean on guys like Harmon, the clubhouse guy, to do the dirty work. It's not an easy job, but it's the most respected job. Hey, coach said team bus leaves at 9, not 9:05. Hey, run out every ground ball. I don't care if we're down by 10 runs, 20 games out of first place. These fans paid good money to be here. Some of these little kids, this might be the only ball game you get to see all year. Make it count. Several years ago, I was at an autograph show, and I was there signing my sports books, and Harmon was there. Wow. And Joe Mauer and Justin Morneau are there. 2 rock stars from my Minnesota Twins, making about $35 million between the two of them. And everybody wanted to meet Justin and Joe. I mean, they had a line around the corner. So they were just signing. It was like an assembly line. They just take your... It was like a squiggly line. You could barely even read their signature. Now, Harmon's old school. Harmon sees this. Well, he gets upset. So he gets up and he walks over and he stops his line. Okay. And then he walks all the way over to Justin and Joe's line and he stops their line. And I'm watching this because sadly, there's nobody in my line. Okay. So all of a sudden the line stops. Justin and Joe look up. Hey, Harmon, how you doing, buddy? What's going on? How can we help you? And Harmon says, you guys are going kind of fast, huh? Yeah, well, what's up? How can we help you? Well, you can slow down. Slow down. He threw these guys under the bus and read them the riot act. Their eyes were like saucers. They'd never been talked to like this. But Harmon let him have it. He said, if these fans are going to honor you with the privilege of asking for your signature, you show them respect. Do it the right way or don't do it at all. You see that ball? That is a Harmon Killebrew signed baseball. And what you'll notice about it is that it's perfect in every way. It's a long name, but it's beautifully cursively written. They've been that way since the early 50s to the day he died. And Harmon, he didn't just stop there. He would always very purposely turn and he would center the ball. He always wanted his signature to be right between the laces. It was an extra step, but he wanted it to look fantastic when you got home and put it up on your bookshelf. And Harmon, he didn't just give you the beautifully legible, perfectly centered ball every time. Nope. Harmon Killebrew under-promised and he over-delivered. He gave you something extra underneath, maybe career home runs, maybe he was inducted in the Hall of Fame. You never knew. It was always a surprise. And while he was signing it, he'd look you in the eyes and ask you about you. Everybody's favorite subject, a memory of a lifetime. And he would consistently do it for a 1-year-old kid who's probably going to slobber on it, or some shady looking dude who's going to have it for sale on eBay later that night. Harmon Killebrew was the glue, the galvanizing force, the voice of reason, the guy that led with respect, that made sure that his team was always making sure they were doing the right things. And as you think about your teams, I want you to think about who your clubhouse guys and gals are. As leaders, your people hear you, but don't always think they're listening to you. We need a culture where it's okay for people, if they see something, it's okay to say something. Hey, we don't put decimal points there. Hey, #MeToo, don't talk to her that way. Hey, we have safety protocols for a reason. We could have a lawsuit or someone could get hurt or worse. We need a culture where people see something, it's okay to say something. And that's what's so important. And when I think of respect, I think of my buddy, Doug Degroff. Doug, how you doing out there, pal? You know, that was, Doug was my tour guide last year, and I want to share a little bit about Doug. He's a real steward of the land. This was our shot last year, and this is this year. He sent me some updated pictures, which is pretty cool. Doug does things the right way and has a no BS way of doing about it, which is why people respect him. You know, Doug is an amazing person. He's dealt with some incredibly challenging medical issues, which makes him one of the toughest human beings I know. And I'm very proud to call him my friend. He's actually a native New Yorker, an Ivy Leaguer from Cornell University. Who'd have thunk, right? But I think he fits in really, really well in the San Joaquin Valley. He has a beautiful wife and 3 kids. They live in Tulare on a 100-acre almond and pistachio farm. Interestingly, however, Doug doesn't farm his land. He hires a guy to do it. Says, Doug, I'm not a farmer. I like almonds, but I like them better with chocolate. Nice. Doug is the CEO of Diversified Dairy Solutions, where he works as a consulting dairy nutritionist. He makes diets for cows. He helps them with performance, with health, and he needs to do that in the most economical way possible for his clients. And it's been a challenging year. I asked Doug about business this year. He said business is about the same. Cows still need to eat every single day, but cows don't care about pandemics. Cows don't care if the price of milk goes down, if the price of feed goes up. It's my job to help my farmers to feed their herds in the best, healthiest, most economical way possible. That's what I do, and I love it, in good times or bad. You see, old school. I asked Doug about his biggest challenge this past year. There's been way too many to count, but one of the most heartbreaking things he said is there's been way too much milk dumping. People don't understand why this valuable product is literally being poured down the drain, he said. Well, you just can't drink raw milk. It has bacteria in it. It needs to be pasteurized for health and safety reasons. The bottom line is that there's no processing capacity right now. The kids aren't in school. Restaurants are closed. These are challenging times, not to mention early on in the pandemic, grocery stores were limiting milk to 2 gallons per family, much like they were rationing hand sanitizer and toilet paper. It was crazy. And get this, it turns out that vitamin D is actually the wonder drug for battling COVID. And where do you suppose we find vitamin D? Wait for it, in milk. Ugh, crazy. I asked him about how he's pivoted during the pandemic. Early on, he wasn't able to meet with his farmers in person, so he'd text them or do video calls like this. He visits 3 to 4 dairies per day, and he didn't want to spread the disease from one farm to another, so he had to be extra cautious, especially around some of the older farmers. Now he's back in the field, but he's still being careful. Plenty of social distancing, no handshaking, and yes, lots of hand sanitizer. That's good. This guy deals with a lot of cow poop, trust me. Doug also pivoted personally when the pandemic hit. He works long hours and he's on the road a lot. So when things shut down, he figured now is the time to spend more time with his kids, to be more present. It's been tough on young kids, and he wanted to build those relationships. He worried about them spending too much time on social media, playing video games. So he decided to go old school and let them experience the circle of life by buying some pigs. He wanted his kids to know where their food came from. So they bred one of them and they got some piglets. He took them through the entire process. They even watched a guy come out to the farm and put a pig down. Yep, they slit his throat, bled it out, gutted it. It was rough, but he wanted them to watch. It worked. His kids now officially know where their bacon comes from. They're proud carnivores. Today they have 10 piglets, and the kids love being around them. They even sleep outside with them. How cool is that? We got a slumber party with a bunch of pigs going on there. Doug even recently doubled down. He now has 10 Labrador Retriever puppies. Needless to say, the kids are busy cleaning up lots of poop, but lucky for them, Dad has lots of hand sanitizer. Doug, you're a good man, and I'm proud to call you my friend. Number 2, be compassionate. Why? Because kindness and empathy, they're more important now than ever. Big college softball playoff game a few years ago between Western Oregon and Central Washington. In the middle is Sarah Tukulski. Late in the game, the senior right fielder stepped up and boom, she hit her first ever career home run. She was so excited. She took off for first base. Runners in third came around to score. The dugout emptied. All of her teammates were jumping up and down, celebrating. They just took a big lead in the big playoff game against her arch rival. Sarah was so excited, she ran right past first base. Now, the first base coach saw this and said, "Whoa, Sarah, turn around, come back. You missed the base." And as she turned to come back, she blew her knee out. And it was bad. ACL, MCL, it was a train wreck. She's laying there in a heap. Her coach came running out. "Ump, we're going to pinch run for her." And the ump said, "I'm sorry, it's against the rules. She'll be credited for 2-run single." "Well, can her teammates help her?" "Sorry, it's against the rules." And as she was laying there crying, the 2 team captains for Central Washington came out, Liz Wallace and Mallory Holtman. And they said, "Hey, ump, anything in the rules that says we can't help her?" They knew her career was over. And the umpire said, "No." So they picked her up and they walked her over to second base and they lowered her down and they took her to third and they brought her home so she could earn that home run with dignity, even if it meant losing by 1, which they did. I think at the end of the day, we choose to do business, to be led, to be influenced by people who are compassionate, people who are kind, who have empathy. Are there some people in your network right now who could use a little support right now. When I think of compassion, I think of the Giacomazzi brothers. That's right. Their dad, Dino, is a member of the board, member of the Ag Leadership Foundation, and a guy who's been really instrumental in putting this whole event together. Dino, good to see you. Dino, his wife, Julie, and their 2 sons live on a 126-year-old, 5th-generation, 1,000-acre farm in Hanford. In fact, it's the oldest continuing operating dairy west of the Rockies. It was started in 1893. When COVID hit, Dino knew he had to pivot. And he wanted his kids to pivot too. So starting with them getting outside and not playing as many video games all day. So when school shut down, he said, you can either grab a shovel and start working the farm, or you can start a company. And from that ultimatum, the boys decided to start a flavored almond business, the Giacomazzi Brothers Nut Company. Dino wanted them to have purpose though, and not just sell nuts to make money. So they thought about it. He let them take ownership and he became their cheerleader. Miro and Gio. Miro's 13, Gio's 8. They like the idea of selling a product that helped people to stay healthy. Nuts are high in protein, low in sugar. It's the perfect snack, right? Normal almonds are boring, said Gio, but these are fun. We used to eat at McDonald's a lot for snacks, but now we eat healthy nuts, and you should too. Nice. So the brothers dove in and they started this company, and dad was right there helping them, supporting them, reinvesting all the money back into the business, sustainability. They had learned e-commerce, shipping, labeling, packaging, logos, pricing. Miro created the website on Shopify, and Gio got to work on the flavors: glazed donut, chizo, blazing hot chizo, sweet sriracha, and churros. Sales started to take off. The one thing that was missing, though, was a way to give back. And that was important to these kids. They're seeing a lot of people on TV who are waiting in long lines to get food. A lot of these are children. So they decided to make some donations to the Fresno Food Bank. And it just grew from there. We realized that not every kid is as lucky as us, said Gio. Some kids don't even have enough food to eat. So we decided to help out. To date, they've probably donated more than 40,000 servings of nuts to help those in need. And it makes the brothers feel pretty good too. That's compassion. To date, business has been going great. So they decided to expand their offerings. Now they've gotten into gift boxes. First was the Christmas box, which was a big seller. That included a bottle of honey from the bees on their farm that pollinated the trees. Nice. And now they've introduced flavored almond butters. They've got jalapeno poppers, sweet sriracha, birthday cake. Sounds yummy. Their only marketing is on Facebook, but through word of mouth, they're selling like crazy. The Super Bowl pack was next. That was last week, and it featured 5 1-pound bags, another new offering. And you guessed it, the Valentine's box is up next. It's this weekend, boys. So get out there and buy your loved one some almonds, not chocolates, right? Now, this isn't all the kids do. They've got other chores on the farm, like feeding and walking the goats, and their new dog, Foxy, too, and who someone recently abandoned in their almond orchard, so they adopted her. They don't get to drive any equipment yet, but this summer, their dad says they get to help with the irrigation lines, and they get to start trapping gophers. Wait, what? Trapping gophers? Did you guys not know that I used to be Goldie the gopher, the mascot at the University of Minnesota? Gophers are good. We like rodents. No hurting the gophers, Dino. That's not good. Now, as for Dino's pivot, well, that had already started a year earlier when they decided to sell all of their cows and focus on farming nuts. A decade earlier, they decided to replace all their corn and wheat with almond and pistachio trees. Once they got mature, it was finally time for the cows to go. And it turned out this year, with the price of milk being down, that it was a huge blessing not to have those dairy costs. You see, Dino's a Gen Xer who struggled with the economics of farming in the 21st century. As a commodity producer, he says, you're a slave to whatever the prices are. It's beyond your control. When you're in the commodity business, you're a price taker, not a price maker. Now, because of the internet, his kids can sell their nuts anywhere in the world. He wanted his kids to grow up thinking about farming, not by thinking small, how do we shave a penny off the price, but rather by how they can think big by creating value for the customers. He wants them to be entrepreneurs, not price-taking commodity producers. I like that. As for the event today, Dino, who's in class number 36, he had this to say: the breakfast, it's pretty special for this group of progressive, like-minded leaders in agriculture to all get together. The breakfast is always fun. It has great speakers, and it's just great to see everyone in a positive environment. Farming can be pretty lonely, and this brings us all together. We'll see y'all next year. Oh, and one more thing. Gio said, make sure you buy a lot of our almonds, and even if you've already bought some, you can buy even more because we'll keep making more. Mark Cuban on Shark Tank, are you listening to these kids? Sounds like we got some future entrepreneurs there. Number 3, strive for consistency. Why? Because anyone can get lucky and have a good game, but long-term success, it's about the grind. And when I think of the biggest grinder in sports, I think of Tom Brady. Love him or hate him, You can't argue with the results. This guy had a pretty good week. He's the GOAT, greatest of all time. You've been hearing it on the news. And did I mention he's going to be 44 years old? Unbelievable. I don't think I've ever met a more competitive human being in my entire life than Tom Brady. Tom Brady, as I learned, hates losing more than he loves winning. The fear of failure drives this guy. I mean, as soon as he wins a championship, he's back practicing, working. Why? Because athletes realize there's no days off. There's no off seasons. I mean, as soon as he wins one, he says, how am I going to do this again next year? See, that's the thing I've learned about sports. It's easy to get to the top. It's really hard to stay at the top, but that's the essence of the dynasty mentality. And that's what Tom Brady's all about. You know, I'm always fascinated as a journalist about just what it is that makes the great ones great. And there's always a chip on their shoulder. There was someone at some point that told me weren't good enough or smart enough or pretty enough. And for Tom, that came back in the year 2000, year he was drafted. See, Tom was the 199th overall pick of the draft that year. That means 31 NFL teams passed over Tom 6 times before the New England Patriots said, sure, we'll take a flyer in the backup from Michigan. What do we got to lose? I mean, Tom had none of the measurables the other quarterbacks did. He was the slowest. He had the lowest vertical leap. He could lift the least amount of weights. Yet, and 6 quarterbacks got drafted ahead of him. Yet he had these intangible qualities, this boyish enthusiasm, running down the field, high-fiving his teammates. And man, did this guy study. When the Patriots drafted him, he said, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to sit in the bench. I'm going to listen. I'm going to learn. I'm going to keep my mouth shut, my ears open. And when my opportunity comes, and it comes in football, it's called the next man up. Someone gets injured. Someone gets benched. Someone gets traded. Someone falls out of favor politically. There's an opportunity. His opportunity came, led his team to the Super Bowl. He's never looked back. So you know what Tom does today whenever he plays one of those 31 teams who passed him over? He says, oh, I wasn't good enough for you? Well, take that. And this is what makes the great ones great. They got to find a reason to get up every morning. They got to keep motivated. That's why Tom switched teams and came to Tampa Bay and recruited a bunch of people and led a team that hadn't been in the playoffs in 2 decades back to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's unbelievable what this guy is able to do as a leader. It's tremendous. You know, people think athletes are rock stars, but they actually lead a very boring life. It's all about consistency. I think that's Tom's greatest quality, is not his ability, but it's just short memory. Throw an interception, forget about it. Have a bad play, a bad game, forget about it. It's about moving on. And it's the same in our world too. I mean, these guys, you know, they spend 95% of the day practicing. Practice stinks, but practice makes perfect. They wake up, they work out, they eat, they train, they sleep, they practice, they watch film, they lift weights, they work out, they train, they sleep. That's what they do over 95% of that, but they live for Sunday mornings, right? I mean, that's what it is. That's when they can just get in the zone and all that work builds confidence. And that's what it's about. And I've learned that Tom spends $1 million a year on private coaching. How many of us have a private sales coach or a leadership coach? I mean, and these are people, in addition to his head coach, his offensive coordinator, his quarterback coach. I mean, I've gotten to know Tom a little bit over the years, but I've learned they're all part of what they call Team Tom. He has a neurologist on staff to help him understand the science of peripheral vision and reflexes. He has a cryotherapy coach, a sleep coach, a mental health coach, strength and conditioning coach, a Pilates reformer coach, a yoga coach, a chiropractor, a dietitian, nutritionist. It's fascinating, even a video coach. It's amazing what these guys are willing to do. I mean, feedback is a gift if you're willing to listen. And at this level, if they think you can help extend their career 10 more minutes, they don't care what it costs. So it's all about education and reinventing themselves. And that's how it is in consistency in our world too, right? It's about waking up, smiling and dialing and getting in our cars and solving other people's problems. It's about grinding. In sports, we call it winning ugly. It doesn't matter. Just win, right? You just keep doing what you're doing. That's what consistency is. It's about that grind. Look, 40% of all companies fail after year 1, 80% after year 5, and 95% of all businesses never even make it to their 15th birthday. How long have you been around? Consistency. I recently keynoted Levi Strauss's annual conference. Pretty amazing company with great momentum. After my presentation, their president took me down to their corporate store in San Francisco and said, hey, pick out some swag for your kid. Cool. So I got a bunch of clothes. I was all excited and I came home and I laid them on my daughter's bed and I said, look, honey. And she came running in and she said, Dad, what are levies? She'd never heard of them before. Thought that was pretty interesting. It's a pretty iconic brand, but she had no idea what they were. So Levi's brings me back a few months later to work with all their global retail store managers. It's a huge conference, thousands of the managers there. And I'm debating, Should I tell them? I know this is going to break their hearts, but I think they need to know there's a 13-year-old girl running around the Mall of America that has absolutely no idea what their product is. So I told them. I told all of them, and it thoroughly broke their hearts. But interestingly, their president came on stage afterward and he said, you know what? As painful as that was to hear, we needed to hear that. We needed to hear that because what was promised to us yesterday means nothing tomorrow. So at this point forward, I now officially declare we're a 168-year-old startup company. We have to reinvent ourselves, guys. Whoa, consistency. Turns out Levi's invented jeans. They invented riveted denim 168 years ago because the gold miners were ripping their freaking pants. But my, how times have changed. Look at all the category killers in the Mall of America today. Lucky, Diesel, Gap, True Religion, Banana Republic, Lee, Wrangler, Dickies. Heck, Walmart has their own private label branded jeans. People are buying jeans on an app on their phone at 3 in the morning in their jammies in their mother's basements. Who could have imagined such a scenario 10, 15 years ago? And these retail store managers, they got problems. Sears, Macy's, Penny's, Kohl's, Herberger's, Dillard's, they're going bye-bye. They got this thing now called Amazon Prime. Maybe you've heard of it. But it's disrupting their world. So Levi said, we better change. We're going to be out of business. They said, you know what? We're no longer selling jeans anymore. Those days are over. Now they're selling experiences. It's all part of their global brand campaign of living Levi's. Where were you in your first pair of Levi's? Remember your first kiss, your first date? They've had experiences to their brand. What's old is new again. Young celebrity influencers like Taylor Swift and Beyonce are bragging about Levi's on Instagram. Who'd have thunk? And they doubled down. They spent $250 million in the naming rights for Levi's Stadium, home of your San Francisco 49ers. Now, they did so because they knew that Super Bowl 50 was going to be played in that stadium. Now, Super Bowls, as you know, use Roman numerals for all their marketing. Do you know what the Roman numeral is for 50? L for Levi's. It's amazing how this company has completely reinvented themselves. Last year with global retail sales in the tank, they were up 10%. This is a $5 billion global brand that didn't have the hubris to say, well, we've always done things that way. We invented jeans. No, they said, you know what? We got to change. And isn't that what this conference today is about? Look, that consistent grind, that work ethic, that was the price of admission. Welcome. Now it's about being open to new ideas, thinking about new ways to think, about consistency, about that grind, about what you do and how you do it. And I'll tell you what, when I think of consistency, I think of my buddy Jim Razor from the J.G. Boswell Company. Jim's in his 3rd decade with the organization and currently serves as the VP of the processing division. He and his wife have 2 sons. They live in Corcoran, just up the road from the plant. There's me last year. This is the before and after. There I am with Doug Degroff out at some of their cotton fields. And here it is today, holding up some tomato paste and some pistachios and some of their cotton. I got to hang with Jim last year, and he gave us a tour of their facilities and told us about all the incredible things J.G. Boswell does. I learned that they're the country's largest irrigated cotton producer and one of the nation's largest tomato growers and processors. I asked him about how business was this past year, and it was a mixed bag. He said that fortunately they didn't have any COVID outbreaks at their facilities, and they didn't have to do any shutdowns either, like the meat packers had to deal with. They invested a lot of additional safety and screening programs for their employees, which included building new break rooms, new bathrooms to minimize contact. And if someone wasn't feeling well, they told them, just stay home. Safety is the key in their world because literally they can't afford to have any shutdowns because tomatoes will literally die on the vine if they have any harvesting or processing issues. But they did okay, no layoffs. Tomatoes, well, they were up. People were at home cooking. So retail grocery sales were way up, especially with a lot of the panic buying early on in the pandemic. Pizza's been way up thanks to deliveries, and a lot of pizza companies used their thick-skinned Roma tomato paste, which was a big bonus. And while retail was up, conversely, their bigger customers on the wholesale food service business, that was down. Restaurants closed by the thousands, and this really took a toll on them. So it was interesting. As for cotton, the prices were way down. Pima cotton, the really good stuff, was trading at less than $1 a pound, a record low. Schools shut down. Kids weren't buying new school clothes. A lot of big clothing retailers in the malls filed for bankruptcy, and that really hurt their business. So they quit buying cotton. They lived off their existing inventories. That helped. Prices rebound, and fortunately, Upland, Akela, and Pima prices have all gotten back to normal. As for their biggest challenges this year, supply chain, that's their biggest issue. Getting cargo ships to get back and forth into and out of China, it's been a logistical nightmare. Beyond that, they're dealing with the aftermath of all the wildfire smoke. This really impacted both cotton and tomatoes. Yields were down, and of course, there's that whole drought thing too. But they're plugging along, and that's what it's all about, right? As for the ag breakfast, Jim said, The program is very important for the industry, very important for them. They've had dozens of their managers go through the leadership program, and they're grateful for all they do. Solid. Good to see you again, Jim. Number 4, try to find your way. Why? Because there's no one right way to lead or build relationships. I write a lot of biographies with head coaches, and I'm always fascinated how great leaders recruit to their style. That is John Gallardi, another one of my childhood heroes in Minnesota, head coach of the St. John's University Johnnies. It's a little Division III college about 3 hours northwest of the Twin Cities. A couple thousand people live in this tiny little town. It's a school mostly for Benedictine monks, but John started the football program there, and he had this really interesting way called winning with no. See, every team has a way. There's a San Francisco 49ers way. There's a J.G. Boswell way. There's a Valley PBS way. It's the way you do business. And it's fascinating. And I want to share with you John Gallardi's way. He's a beautiful guy. We lost him this past year, a real beauty of a guy. But I want to share with you his way because I want to empower you, to encourage you to think differently about your way, a different tool for your toolbox of how you deal with a young Gen Z or a millennial or crusty old boomer or senior. It's about building relationships. That's what great coaches do. So winning with no, St. John's University. No scholarships, no recruiting, no freshman program, no junior varsity program. Let me just stop right there. That means every kid who tried out for the team, regardless of age, size, ability, girth, was on the varsity. He didn't recruit anyone. He didn't cut anyone. It's all about no. No captains. All the seniors shared that role. No staff meetings, no player meetings, no watching film, no dress code, no special diet, no training table, no special dormitory, meaning all the football players ate, lived, and slept with all the other kids. Nothing fancy. No signs in the dressing room, no slogans, no superstitions. There's no playbook, no statistics posted, no newspaper clippings posted. There's no Hall of Fame. There's no counting individual tackles, no Gatorade celebrations, no trash talking tolerated, no cheap shots or foul play tolerated, no cheerleaders. In practice, there's no conditioning, no weightlifting, no long practices, about 45 minutes, no tackle dummies, no tackling in practice, very important, no agility drills, no lengthy calisthenics, no running laps, no wind sprints, no special staff uniforms, no clipboards, no whistles, no practicing on Sunday or Monday. Kids need some time off, no yelling or screaming at players. There's no practicing in the rain, extreme heat or cold, or if there's too many mosquitoes. We have a lot of mosquitoes up here in Minnesota. There's no water or rest denied if a player wants it, and there's no off-seasons captains practices. Wow. Now, if you're a college football fan, this is pretty much counterintuitive to every single program in the country. Agreed? The results. No players ever not graduated. No discipline problem. No graduating class has never not had at least 1 or 2 prospective pro football players. No Division III college has ever had larger crowd support. They sold out every game. They love their Johnnies. No team has ever had fewer injuries. No tackling in practice. But most importantly, no coach in the history of college football has ever won more games than John Gallardi. That's the winningest coach ever. More than Bear Bryant, Pop Warner, Amos Alonzo Stagg, Eddie Robinson, Joe Paterno, you name it. And he did it with a crazy, archaic system that nobody thought would work. But my point is, there's no one right way. This is about you finding your way. Thinking about creating different ways to deal with different people. And when I think about a guy who's definitely got a way, I think of my buddy, Dave Atkinson. Nice. This guy's definitely found. Dave is a proud independent family farmer who, along with his brother, owns Atkinson Acres Incorporated in Exeter. He's married. He's got 3 kids. One of them, Austin, works with them out in the orchards. And while he's pretty passionate about oranges, he even loves his Fresno State Bulldogs even more. Nice. His way, as I found, is to kill you with kindness. Nice. That's how he does business. What a great guy. My wife and I, we got to spend an afternoon with Dave last year, and he couldn't have been more gracious. He gave us a tour of his acreage. He served us so many oranges that I literally almost barfed. That's true. And then he left us with a giant sack of oranges that my wife and I devoured later that weekend. And we drove down to Carmel and Santa Barbara, and man, Caracaras, incredible. Dave farms over 220 acres of citrus, which is about 25,000 trees, as I learned. They produce Caracaras, navel oranges, blood oranges, gold nugget mandarins, tango mandarins, and mellow gold grapefruits. They outsource the picking and pruning crews through the packing houses they work with, Porterville Citrus and Sierra Citrus, and all their stuff is sold exclusively through Sunkist. When I asked him about how business has been since the last time we saw each other, surprisingly, he said that 2020 turned out to be a pretty good year. Interesting. He said that 2019 had been pretty rough. They overproduced, sales were down. They were expecting 2020 to be even worse with even lower production. He figured they wouldn't be able to harvest their entire crop and excess inventory would become juice byproduct, which I learned creates almost no profits, but rather it's just an economical way to get your fruit off your trees. He said that the price for a carton of fruit in 2019 was $12.11. Then when COVID hit in mid-March, the price plummeted to below $10. This is barely above break even, not including taxes and other costs of living expenses. It was really bad, and they thought it was going to be a complete disaster. Add to that the fact that the refrigerated cargo container ships were stuck at the ports in Long Beach and Portland and couldn't get their cans, that shipping container lingo I learned, out to Korea, China, Japan, and cutie sales plummeted because schools were shut down and kids weren't packing lunches. But then things turned around. By April 2020, the price jumped to $14.56, and by June it was up to $17. Why? Ironically, because of COVID. The demand for vitamin C went through the roof. Immune deficiency issues and overall health and wellness issues associated with the benefits of citrus created huge demand. Combine that with the fact that the stay-at-home order saw more people eating at home. This meant they were buying more citrus. All in all, they had a really good year in 2020. But as farmers know, there always seems to be a yin and a yang to this business, right? I know I grew up, my stepdad farmed. It was always a yin and a yang. Turns out lemons and blood oranges were way down. Why? Because most of them are served at bars and restaurants for drink garnishes. And sadly, there's not too many things happening in those establishments these days. As Dave said, that's farming. Farming is just a lot of luck at a lot of times. One guy's gain is oftentimes another guy's loss. It's sad, but that's just the way it goes in this crazy business. Overall, he's optimistic about 2021. Prices were up to nearly $18. The Chinese New Year is coming, and that's huge for citrus. He said it's like Halloween for the candy makers. So his advice is hang in there and please keep buying oranges. As for the egg breakfast, he loves it. He thinks it's a wonderful program. He's been coming to the breakfast for 20 years. Interestingly, he said that the first keynote speaker he ever saw was Frank Avengale, who starred in the movie Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. So I'm your second favorite keynote speaker, Dave. Man, hope to see you soon, buddy. There's an updated picture of Dave out playing with his toys out in the orchard. Nice. A great human being. Love that guy. Number 5, visualize success. Why? Because if you can see it, you can do it. That is the 1997 Detroit Red Wings. I'm a pretty big hockey fan living up here in Minnesota. It's a pretty iconic team, a team that wasn't predicted to win the Stanley Cup, but when they did, it was a pretty big deal. So I interviewed a lot of these guys for my book, Raising Stanley. And I asked these guys, were you surprised when you won the Stanley Cup that year? And interestingly, every single player I talked to said, no, we had a goal, we had a vision, we won the cup. It was like no big deal. This blew my mind. I'd never heard anything like this before in all my years of interviewing athletes. So I had to figure out why. So I dove deep and started interviewing players, and I got to know their head coach, this guy on the right, Scotty Bowman. He actually wound up writing the introduction for my book. Scotty Bowman, as I learned, is the winningest coach in the history of the National Hockey League. 14 Stanley Cup rings this guy's got. He even named his freaking kid Stanley. How cool is that? And now Stanley's won his third Stanley Cup. I said, Scotty, what's the secret sauce? How'd you win all these cups? Because he won them, by the way, with multiple organizations. I mean, it wasn't just one dynasty team that won 14 cups. He had a process. He was able to recreate and visualize success. He had a process in Pittsburgh and Montreal and St. Louis and Detroit. He said, Ross, it's not about having the best players. It's about having the right players for your system. There's so much we can learn from sports that applies to business. As you think about your book of business, as you think as leaders, who's on your team, your teammates, your cast and crew, you stuff in square pegs and round holes, or do you put the right people together? Team chemistry was the key. That team, as I learned, had a whole line of Russians, the Russian 5. All 5 guys grew up playing pond hockey in the Soviet Union. Scotty handpicked them, even helped a couple of them defect. Why? Because he understood that when friends played together, they had more fun. They'd fight for each other. You can do that in hockey. It's pretty cool. They would enjoy assists more than goals because that guy's buying beer, and that's a pretty big deal in hockey. But he understood the power of putting the right people together, all rowing the boat together, visualizing success. That team had a whole line of Swedes, all 5 guys handpicked. They weren't the best, but they were the right players. And they all talked about visualize. See, every morning at the morning huddle, they would visualize success. Boys, what's it going to taste like drinking Moosehead beer out of the Stanley Cup? That was the vision, right? Scotty had this saying, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So they had a plan. Boys, what's it going to take to raise Stanley? That was the plan. That was the mission. What's it going to take? Everybody had ownership. Whether you were a first-line centerman making $10 million a year or you were a fourth-line fighter, everybody had value. Everybody's input was valued, and everybody was a part of this vision together, rowing the boat together. That's what it's all about, right? And look, it's 82 games, 16 playoff victories. You ain't going to win them all. It's ups, downs, winning streaks, losing streaks. Things come up, injuries, you pivot, you make adjustments. It's cliche, but that's what sports is all about. Scotty, he never let him get too high. He never let him get too low. He knew when to put the hammer down and ask for more. He knew when to back off the gas and send him out to the golf course. But it was all about this vision. I actually got to work with the Red Wings a couple of years ago. Mr. I brought me in to work with their team, and wow, at one point they had the longest consecutive postseason streak of any team in professional sports in North American history. For 26 consecutive seasons straight, the Red Wings made the playoffs. Think about that. Whatever team you root for, whatever sport. I mean, for more than a quarter century with 100% turnover multiple times, you know what the Red Wings did? They just found ways to win. And they did so, by the way, in a city that filed bankruptcy, playing in the worst, crappiest, oldest, lowest revenue producing arena, Joe Louis Arena. You know what the Red Wings did? They just found ways to win. They didn't complain about what all the other teams had with their fancy arenas and luxury suites and profit centers. No, Scotty Bowman got his A players, his veterans, his leaders to coach up his B and C players, the kids, to mentor them. And it was all about success. Visualizing success. What is 2021 going to look like for you? If you think it's going to be bad and really horrible, then it's going to be. But if you're positive and you think about how you're going to affect change and what you're going to do, visualizing success is really what it's all about. And when I think of success, I think of Charlie Pitliano. Yeah. Charlie owns and operates Pitliano Farms, a 100-year-old fifth-generation farm near Tipton, where he and his wife Nancy and their three sons, Michael, Josh, and Dominic, manage nearly 12,000 acres of almonds, pistachios, walnuts, and cuties. Together, in addition to overseeing their own acreage, they also farm for fellow ranchers, dairymen, investors, and absentee landowners. It's a big commercial operation. He leads a team of over 50 employees. Here we are last year at the World Ag Expo. That's Gus, the autonomous tractor. Remember that guy? Charlie was great. He was my personal tour guide last year at the Expo, shoveling us around in his personalized golf court. This year, while the Expo gate stayed closed, it remained open virtually. The exhibitors, equipment manufacturers all did virtual videos. People could zoom in and talk to them about their products and buy things and learn about things. It was a big pivot, and it worked. It was tough on Charlie and for everyone, but he knows it's only temporary. He assured me that the Expo is financially sound, that it's being run by some pretty extraordinary people, that it's got a whole lot of great exhibitors and sponsors who've hung in there this past year. Thank you. And overall, he's excited to get things rolling in 2022. He's excited to get back out there in his golf cart where he can eat ice cream sandwiches and drink cold beer, allegedly. I know what you're up to, Charlie. It's outstanding, he said at the Expo. It opens my eyes to all the possibilities. I'm like a human sponge whenever I walk through those gates and see all the interesting products and people. I've been coming for 30 years and I love it. But make no mistake, this was a tough year on a lot of folks at the Expo, and they had to pivot. So they used those 200-acre grounds for other things, such as horse and cattle shows, antique shows, even classic car shows. And they're now proudly serving Tulare and Fresno County residents by offering a drive-through vaccination center at the Expo grounds. Talk about visualizing success. How cool is that? Way to go. As for Pitliano Farms, how'd they do in 2020? It was a tough year. He's not gonna lie. Business was down. He did receive some government stimulus money, which helped, but it was only a Band-Aid. Why? Well, as I learned, almonds had a 40% reduction in price this past year. Part of it was because of supply and demand issues, but another big part of it was because of overproduction. California hit 3 billion pounds this year, a record harvest, and it had an adverse effect on the market. Then when COVID hit, the ports got shut down. There were no exports going to China and India. It was the perfect storm. This year, he's optimistic. Prices are coming up. Demand is high because everyone is sitting around at home snacking on nuts, baking with nuts, putting them in everything from cookies to salads. People are finally realizing that nuts are cheap and nutritious. They're a protein and they have a long shelf life. So this makes a great alternative to meat. Sales are up, but Charlie does see some challenges ahead, especially when it comes to water issues. And this makes him nervous. He explained to me that the water situation in the valley is dire and that underground pumping regulations are all out of whack. and that the aquifer is depleting because they've been pumping more water out than they've been putting in. And furthermore, Charlie is not happy with all of the bureaucrats who are not properly managing the water in the valley. He explained to me that we have plenty of water for residents, animals, and agriculture, but we need to figure out how we can capture the water from the mountains before it gets to the ocean. And please don't even get him started on certain species of fish that the tree huggers have embraced. It's complicated, trust me, but he makes a pretty compelling point because the infrastructure, as water diminishes, the price of food is only going to get more expensive. The infrastructure was built for 50 million people, not 150 million people. So we need more doers, not bureaucrats from San Francisco and Los Angeles who can solve all these water problems and let you guys do what you do best, and that's grow crops and feed the world. Give him hell, Charlie. Keep visualizing success, my friend. Nice. Here's a picture of Charlie that's updated with his family out in his groves. Pretty cool. But visualizing success. If you think it's going to be a bad year, it's going to be a bad year. I'm here to challenge you to think a little bit differently. Number 6, be willing to adapt and change. Why? We're all going to have circumstances beyond our control. That is Bryson DeChambeau. Any golfers out there? I love golf. I suck at golf. Once I stopped cheating at golf, it became very liberating. No more foot wedges, no more mulligans. But this guy, he's an outlier. Bryson DeChambeau. They call him the mad scientist. He was a physics major at SMU University. I mean, just for fun, this guy loved studying angles and geometry, and probabilities and neurology and science and algorithms. And, he came onto the tour a couple years ago and he was a good golfer. Not great, just good. But his nature is to figure out, how to do things differently. So he said, how has everyone been golfing for the past 150 years? Turns out there's been technology changes, with the drivers and the equipment, but really people have been doing it the same way. So he decided to do things totally different. So all of his clubs are the same. It's crazy. I mean, in golf, like your 9-iron is very short and your 3-iron is very long and it weighs more. But he said, I'm going to make it exactly the same. And that way I'll take all the guesswork. I'll have one swing and it will let the equipment just adjust to me. So all of his clubs are 37.5 inches. They're 278 grams. The lie and the bounce angle, exactly the same. Only the loft changes from a 9-iron to a 3-iron. That's it. All the same. Crazy. People thought he was nuts, but he said, I'm going to do it. Then he said, what else is unique? What else is the same? The grip. Everyone's been gripping the clubs forever in their fingers. He said, you know what? I'm going to grip it in my palm. Totally different. So he uses Jumbo Max grips. It's like holding a Coke bottle, but he holds it back here. That way, he just uses his arms to swing and everything is the same. He can be more consistent. Then he said, you know what? He got better. Not great, better. He said, I need to hit it further. If I could just hit it like 350 yards, then I could just use this system and I could just chip and putt and I'd win every time. So when COVID hit, he said, I'm going to get bigger. So he hired a whole team of strength and conditioning coaches to work really unique muscles in his biceps and lateral obliques. He started working out 8 to 10 hours a day, started eating 5,000 calories a day. The result? He gained 40 pounds of muscle, and the guy is a freaking gorilla. He came out this summer on the tour and was bombing the ball 400 yards. He shattered every driving record ever. He would just hit it over trees and he'd be in a bunker. He didn't care. He could just chip and putt. Oh, and by the way, he won the US Open. Wow. So I guess my point is, how are you going to reinvent yourself this year? Look, nothing's the same. Everything changed. So what's next? When I think of a guy who's really been able to change and adapt, I think of Ron Locke, CEO of Top of the Morn Farms. Pretty interesting guy. Now, Ron's new to my list, but my buddy Doug Degroff recommended that I check him out, so I gave him a call, and I was fascinated by what I learned. Ron is a dairy producer from Tulare, where he and his wife, Evie, bottle their own milk, and they have a successful home delivery service, Top of the Morn Farms. Ron has provided milk to the Ag Breakfast for years. He's a big fan. It's a Dutch dairy with an Irish name. You gotta love it. The family business has an interesting backstory that begins in 1962 when Evie's father, an immigrant from Holland, started Top of the Morn Farms. In 2000, Ron and Evie decided to bring back the cash and carry home delivery business, and they've been changing and adapting and evolving ever since. In 2012, the Locks built a bottling barn and began processing and bottling their dairy's milk into refillable, reusable glass bottles. Sustainability, nice. Their home delivery routes have continued to expand, and for an added convenience to their customers, they even opened 2 separate dairy drive-through locations in Tulare and Visalia. You can order coffee, smoothies, milkshakes, plus you can buy milk and even eggs there too. Before long, Top of the Morn Farms was delivering milk, not only to residential doorsteps, but also to grocery stores like Albertsons and Sprout stores and Stater Brothers, as well as to restaurants and farmers markets. They've always tried to get creative too, and are very proud of their award-winning products, including my personal favorite, peanut butter and chocolate milk. That sounds tasty. As for how business is going this past year, unlike most farmers in the Valley, it's been way up. Interestingly, they only bottle about 10% of their milk. They sell the other 90% to a local mozzarella cheese manufacturer. Mozzarella cheese, in case you're wondering, is the main ingredient on pizza, which has been way up in the pandemic. Demand is through the roof. This was an important pivot to diversify early on when they saw things coming. He knew that there was too much supply, and when it was announced that kids weren't going to be in school and not drinking milk, he reacted quickly. That gut instinct. As for his home delivery business, sales are way up there too. In fact, he has a waiting list, a huge waiting list for new customers. He owns 3 delivery trucks and makes more than 500 deliveries per week to homes throughout the Valley. His biggest challenge for this side of the business is finding reliable drivers who can keep up with the demand. As for his drive-through stores, sales are up over 100%. One of them even opened on March 15th, the day Gavin announced it was shelter in place. Luckily for him, drive-throughs suddenly became essential, and he feels truly blessed. I asked him about what the secret sauce was, how he was going to differentiate himself. And his answer, much like Ron himself, was straight to the point. We use good, fresh, conventional milk. No marketing games. It's just fresh, he said. We treat our cows nice, which people really like. And we don't play any of the label games. No fear marketing. We try to be as transparent as possible. If you want to come see our cows, come on over. We love our cows, and that's why they produce delicious milk. We don't say our milk is better than our competitors. We just sell it differently. Enough said. Business is good, but Ron doesn't take anything for granted. He's proud to be working with his family, providing a great service to his community, but he knows things can quickly change in this business. But all in all, Ron pivoted, he diversified, and he evolved. And that's what today is really all about. It's about pivoting, changing, and adapting. I mean, I've been pivoting for years. I mean, I could see early on that the book business was going to die. So I pivoted. I got into speaking. Borders is gone. B. Dalton's is gone. Borders, B. Dalton's, Barnes, Crown Books, Walden Book, they're all gone. B. Dalton, Barnes and Noble's hanging on by a thread. Recently acquired by a private equity firm, whatever that means. But I assure you, they sell more caramel macchiatos, board games, tchotchkes, greeting cards, and music than they do books. And now they've got these hideous, disgusting things called ebooks, Kindles, Nooks. I hope none of you people have these terrible devices. They're killing me, man. I write $25 books, but the e-version is $7. Look, I got to do the same amount of work. I got to write it, edit it, market it, publish it, promote it, but I only make a fraction of the profit. Is that fair? No, but that's my reality. I can whine about it and go out of business, or I can change. So I changed. I don't write books anymore. Now I make Christmas gifts. All my books come out in design in November for like kids that like to wrap up and parents like to wrap up and give away books. Little kids get my books and they unwrap them. They're all excited and they don't know what the hell it is. It's a book. It's painful, but that's my audience. Now books, they're just loss leaders. It's what I call currency. I just give them away. When client wants to hire me, I don't send them a brochure. I send them a bunch of my sports books for their bathroom library. And what that does, it starts a relationship, gives me permission to call back. So I've shifted, totally shifted. I learned that a book doesn't have to be a book. It can be a movie. So I wrote this cool book on hockey fighting. It's about this honor code the players live by and about accountability. It's not about fighting. It's about what leads to fighting. If you cheap shot a guy or cheat, then you might lose some teeth. We call that spitting chiclets in my business, but it's about this honor code. So it was fascinating stuff. Did a few documentaries. And then a couple years ago, we did a feature film with an Academy Award winning director. How cool is that? I'm only in the movie for like 2 minutes. So if you watch it, don't blink. But a book became a movie. And then I realized that a book could become a speech, which is pretty cool. So now there's my man crush Wayne in the cover of Wearing the Sea. Now I've got another speech. I can work with more clients, right? And I think there's a lot of companies that have pivoted well, right? I mean, look, I think that for me, pivoting, I mean, look, I wanted to be there in person. I was going to come out and spend a whole week interviewing people. PBS was going to do amazing video. And it wasn't going to be me just telling stories. We were going to get actual video and we were going to turn this into a big thing. It was going to air statewide. We were so excited, but we had to pivot. Gavin said I couldn't come. So, the budgets fell. I said, you know what else can I do? So I cut my fee in half. I said, I want to come. I donated boxes of books to the vendors and sponsors and said, what else can I do? But that I even came in yesterday. I made an entire backup video and I emailed it in just in case there's any Wi-Fi problems. This is extra, extra, extra work. But you know what? Welcome to 2021, where you're going to work twice as hard for half the pay. But that's what today's all about, right? It's about us solving problems, thinking creatively. Look, I had a couple events in California last month that were going to all be canceled. One we did in a vineyard outside of Olisol. It was amazing. We brought a TV out. I was outside with the group. One we did in a rooftop in Tiburon outside San Francisco, outside. And the third one was up in Davis, where we were in a redwood forest. You have to think differently and be creative, but it's about the pivot. And I think a lot of companies have really successfully pivoted, like the Minnesota State Fair. It's a huge deal in Minnesota. 2 million people go through this thing. It was going to go broke. So they decided to do a drive-through trade fair. It was a massive success. You drive through, get all your food. It was amazing. Country Airlines, another cool business here in Minnesota. They were going to go Chapter 7 when COVID hit. They said, you know what? Let's pivot. Let's take out the seats of our planes and start hauling Amazon Prime packages. They just bought a whole bunch of new planes. How about the Hewing Hotel? When our governor had a no indoor dining clause, that's hard here in Minnesota when it's 40 below zero. The hotel said, you know what? There's a gray area. We can still do room service. So you can go to the Hewing Hotel and like a prostitute, you can rent out a room for a couple hours and they'll bring you a 7-course meal. How great is that? But they pivoted. How about drive-ins? What a godsend they've been doing. Concerts and weddings and church rallies and whatever else they got. I've been working with some furniture manufacturers. They've all pivoted. Everyone's home officing these days, right? So now it's about finding, changing, shifting the way you think. How about Lulu? Man, if they knew there was going to be a surge in sweatpants and everyone laying around at home, wow, their business is way up and people spend a lot of money for those sweatpants, right? How about US Bank? I work a lot in financial services and they had to close 10% of their stores. I mean, 300 of 3,000. Why? Well, brick and mortar struggling. Young people today are interested more in fintech, insurtech, which is they want to bank on their phone. So they've reimagined their stores now and they're repurposing them. They look more now like an Apple store meets a Starbucks. Come on in, we'll solve some problems. I just had a recent event with funeral home directors. Sadly, their business is way up for all the wrong reasons. It's tragic, but they're saying, you know what? They've learned now that when people are having all these situations and families are put in these situations, people want to have more control. They want to decide what they want to do. So they're not doing funerals, they're doing funerals. What's a funeral? You decide the music. You decide the guest list. You make a video. You can have your custom casket, a custom hearse. It's all about changing. How about Nike during the pandemic? Their sales are up 85%. Why? They leaned into all the social injustice issues. And they've got customized shoes, which you can order, which the young millennials and Gen Zs really like. So their business is booming. How about Point Vodka up in San Francisco? Pretty cool. They use fog water. There's so many water issues and they donate proceeds to the redwood forest and for water conservation, but they sell this stuff for like $125 a bottle, Point Vodka. It's amazing. They're using fog nets to capture water and people love it because they feel good about it. It's philanthropy meets entrepreneurship. I love it. And that's what it's about. It's about looking for silver linings, right? Changing, adapting. And I mean, yes, these are tough times, but try to focus on the positives, not the negatives. When I was there last time, I had a list of some of your challenges. I was studying all the things in your world, and I had to add to my list is 3 pages this year. So you guys have you heard about my challenges, but you guys have challenges. I mean, you can only control what you can control, right? I mean, we've got COVID. Can't control that. When we're going to get back to normal, and we got vaccines. When are we going to get vaccinated? And now we got variants from South Africa and the UK, and politics. There's another impeachment hearing going on in case you haven't heard. There's a governor recall, and you're not the words I've heard. The economy. Will there be another index yield curve that's going to spiral us into a recession or a depression? We got cryptocurrency. That's changing the way people do things. There's PPP money, interest rates, land prices, the price of a barrel of oil. That's all changing. Terrorism. We got Chinese espionage and Russian hackers. There's a new administration. How is the Biden administration going to affect your business and your taxes? How about Chinese tariffs? Exports, there's immigration issues, labor issues, 40 hours a week, $15 an hour minimum wage, I don't know, healthcare costs, insurance premiums, workman's comp, there's drug testing, legalized marijuana. Can you find someone to pee clean who's going to run your equipment? I don't know. Hemp and THC are growing like crazy. There's homelessness issues, social justice issues, right to repair bills, overproduction, commodity prices, logistics issues, antibiotics, organics, GMOs, gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian, impossible burgers, meatless meat, soy milk, almond milk, oat milk, lactose intolerance. Walmart is processing its own milk. Walmart, seriously? Milk prices are too low. We're losing family farms. Do millennials and Gen Zs even want to get into farming? Feed costs are up. There's the ugly produce movement. Bees are disappearing. Why? Too many pesticides. I don't know. There's lack of cold storage space. Apparently there's too much butter powder and cheese inventory. Who knew? We talked about milk dumping, and there's water rights, district water, underground pumping regulations, wells, aquifers, white zones, irrigation issues, and there's SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. Please don't ask Charlie about this. He's very sensitive. There's environmentalists, Clean Air Acts, emission standards, autonomous vehicles. You got bad roads, lack of rural broadband and Wi-Fi. There's co-op politics, packing house drama. There's food safety regulations, food recalls, E. coli breaks, hoof and mouth, bird flu, SARS, Ebola, mites, fruitworms, coyotes, and of course, Delta smelt. You got cross hybridization, self-pollinating almonds. You got the EPA, the FDA, OSHA, the FSA, USDA, CDFA, egg theft, and my personal favorite, illegal dumping. I know it's not what you think, but it's when people dump stuff on your land. Anyways, it's a big issue. Anyways, and then there's this freaking high-speed train rail line running right through the middle of the freaking valley that nobody seems to want. And then there's the weather, starting with the forest fires, which are tragic. We feel awful for you guys. They're heartbreaking. Droughts, mudslides, floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, polar vortexes. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, we got murder hornets. I know. It's a thing. You can Google it. But you know what? Don't worry about all this stuff. Just focus on what you do, feeding the world from one of the most beautiful spots on the planet, the San Joaquin Valley. Focus on what you can control. Look, when COVID hit, last time we saw each other, this was right in the precipice. I mean, last time I saw you, I had just spoken in Shanghai. We'd heard about this virus, but we didn't know about it. I keynote 120 conferences a year. My calendar went blank. That was brutal. So you know what I did? I started eating and drinking a lot. And then I slapped myself silly and said, you need to start focusing on what you can do. So you know what? I started focusing on my mental health, being positive, and my physical health. I'm proud to say I'm down 50 pounds since I saw you guys last time. Woo-hoo! I even ran a marathon. I had to go all the way to South Dakota to do it because they never shut down. Thank you, South Dakota. But you know what? That's what I decided to focus on, just being more present. This silver lining for me was getting off the road, getting my health back, getting my life back. And now I'm so happy. I lost a lot of money this year. It was a brutal year, but I'm excited for next year. I'm focusing on my why. And that's what I want you to think about. My colleague, Simon Sinek, talks about your why. And for me, it's my family. Focus on what you can do. Focus on being more present, about being kind and smiling and helping people and serving others and solving problems creatively. I know these are cliche, but for me, it's about travel. That's my true passion. And I know that by the laws of karma, the harder I work, the luckier I'll get. So we got to visit our 7th continent last year in Antarctica. There's a lot of penguin poop there. So if you go, I'm telling you, bring a lot of sanitizer. But this is what it's about. I mean, my daughter went off to college this year at the University of Minnesota. How did that possibly happen? But it's about being present, doing what you can. We had a great trip to the Virgin Islands over Christmas. We're going to be in Mexico coming up in April, and we're going to be in May in Hawaii with the Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of California. I met those guys at your event last year, and they're bringing me to Hawaii, so hopefully I'll see some of you guys there as well. But lastly, just have fun. I know it's hard, and I know these are tough times, but look, as leaders, we like to be led by, we like to be influenced by, we like to work with and be around fun, funny, nourishing, passionate people. And look, I know it's cliche, but whatever stage of the game yet, remember, age, it truly is just a number. I told you guys last year about my buddy Lou Battori. Well, this year I got Julia Hurricane Hawkins. She's 105 years old. She's a competitive runner in Louisiana. And guess what? She wins every race she competes in. You know why? Nobody else in her age group. How great is that? Look, being a champion, it's a choice. It's your choice. And just like Wayne Gretzky, every morning when you walked in, you get to decide what your attitude is going to be: positive, smiling, amazing, or negative and toxic. But remember, winning just for the sake of winning, it's fleeting, it's hollow, it's not sustainable. There's a fine line between cheating and gamesmanship in sports and business and life. Follow your moral compass, your true north. You'll be tempted to take shortcuts along the way, especially when times are tough, but don't. Don't wind up like Lance and Bernie from hero to zero on my wall of shame. Remember, individuals win games, but it takes a team to win a championship. And it's been my honor to be a member of the California Agricultural Leadership Team for the day. I want to thank Emily Rooney, amazing MC, Mark Krebsbach, your chairperson. I want to thank Dwight, Deanna, Doug Degroff, the whole team at Valley PBS. I want to thank the platinum sponsor, Zenith, amazing job, the Ag Leadership Foundation, the World Ag Expo. I want to thank a bunch of the other sponsors, especially Chubb, Nationwide, and Berkshire Hathaway, only because you guys have hired me in the past. So thanks for that. And that's it. Just keep doing what you guys are doing. We hope to see you again. My wife and I had such an amazing time coming to the Valley. What a magical, beautiful place. I'll be in California a whole bunch this year. Things are looking up. I'm hopeful that our paths will cross soon. But that's it. My time is up. Thank you for participating. The open bar is open, right? Did I get, well, okay, mimosas maybe. But that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ross, for that awesome speech. I got to tell you, I'm in state politics, so some days I pray for murder hornets as a distraction. But I want to just say I really loved the analogy between sports stars and farmers. And during your comparison of the Tom Brady situation, and you were saying he wasn't a rock star because of the daily grind. It's just a grind, right? And to me, that's what makes the rock star, right? If you look at professional athletes and you look at farmers, I think they are the true rock stars because they are doing the daily grind, and it takes a special level of resilience to just perform the job. So anyway, loved your speech. Thank you so much. And it looks like it is now time for Q&A for Ross and Dwight. As a reminder, this is a webinar, so feel free to put any questions in the chat, and we will collect those questions and address them to both Ross and Dwight and tee them up. So. Okay, Dwight, the first question's for you. What is your vision for the future of ag leadership?
Yeah, well, you know, our stated vision today, of course, is to be a catalyst for a very, very vibrant ag industry in California. And we're currently in the process of executing a strategic planning process, which I think many of you are aware of. So we're reviewing our vision statement along with mission and vision, or values rather. Personally, I'm looking for a way for the foundation to have a greater impact than it has already in the 50+ years of its existence. I talked earlier about the 1,300 alums that are all doing great things in their communities, in the industry, for their families. But I want to see what we as an organization, as a foundation, can do to even enhance that impact and make an even more positive difference than is currently being made by the foundation.
And for Ross, who is your favorite servant leader in sports?
I'm a big hockey guy. I'm partial to my guy, Wayne Gretzky, but you know, it's just fascinating. There's so many great leaders in sports, and there's just no one right way to do it. And that's what makes it so interesting is, you know, and that's what's unique about sports. It's a universal language, whether I'm talking cricket in South Africa or rugby in New Zealand. People love their teams, they hate their teams, but we tend to follow people who we love. You know, we can all go back and think about when we were kids, our favorite teacher. You can all go back and think about your favorite coach, and you can think about your favorite boss. And then, you know, there's that one coach you quit on. There's that one boss that you didn't want to work hard for, and you quit on him or her. And that's what it's about. It's really just about relationships. When I write these books, I'm always fascinated how great teams, they talk about family. You know, we saw the Goat in the Boat parade today. It was Tampa Bay having their big parade out in the water in Tampa Bay. And they just talked about everyone loves each other, right? And there was no drama. You know, there were no off the field issues going on. And it's magical when all those things line up. And that's what's fun. In sports, it changes every day, every minute. We have heroes and villains, good and bad. But I think a lot of it applies, like you said, Emily, just to how you can run your business. I think there's just a lot we can learn from sports. But I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, I think it just comes back to attitude and just how bad you want it. You know, I don't want to be in my basement doing this stuff. I want to be in person. I get energy from being on the stage. I don't want to look into a camera hole and not see anyone. I want to be a part of it, but I know this is temporary. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat, because we're not. If you're on this call right now, you're in a good boat. Some people can't eat. Some people don't have a place to live. So we've all been very blessed. And I think we need to remember that yeah, it was a rough year and it's not over. We've still got a ways to go, but stay positive. And if you're going to lead, you know, do it from the heart. And I think people are going to follow you if they see that authenticity.
All right, thank you for that. And back to Dwight. In your first 4 months at Ag Leadership, what has been your favorite moment?
Yeah, I think that's an easy answer. In fact, you had You had actually referred to that during my intro, Emily, when you talked about the time that I've spent early on interfacing, communicating, meeting with all the stakeholders in ag leadership. I made a priority when I came on in October to really listen and hear what was on the minds of alums, hear what was on the minds of our staff, hear what's on the minds of former CEOs, directors of education, to hear from them what they thought our biggest opportunities were for the foundation to continue to grow, prosper, and have that impact that I just talked about. So by far and away, the favorite thing that I've been able to do thus far is just interface with all the stakeholders in the foundation.
Oh, good. Thanks for that. And Ross, back to you. Has wearing the C changed in a COVID world?
Well, it's hard to lead. I mean, people are, I'm still speaking at a lot of conferences. I'm sometimes I have a couple of these events a day because I can, without traveling, and it's fascinating seeing how every leader is motivating people. And during COVID, it's really hard. I mean, everyone's home officing right now. They're daycare providers, they're cooks, they're janitors, they're operations specialists. I mean, they're Ubers. I mean, it's really hard to get people to be motivated. I mean, look, people in agriculture have been social distancing for centuries, right? This is nothing new. And I've been home officing for my whole career. So this is nothing new for me either. In fact, in some regards, it's given me more opportunities, but certainly leading in this new economy and all these situations it's challenging. But if you're one of the sponsors in the insurance business, for instance, look at my setup. It's very authentic. It's personal. Sports is what I do. And my office looks like my third grade bedroom, but you know what? It's what I do. So don't let me look at you in front of a blank wall with a fern and a fire escape or an exit sign. I mean, make it interesting and be excited, right? I mean, authenticity and sincerity and being genuine is about being excited what you do. Yeah, I know this sucks. We're all doing more for less, but be excited when people see you and you have the ability to connect over Zoom. Look, this Zoom thing isn't going anywhere. It's going to become more. Even conferences I speak at, they're all going to be hybrid conferences where some people, if you've been vaccinated or are comfortable, you'll come in person. Other people, you'll be at home. So this hybrid model, it's not going anywhere ever. It's going to become more of it. Companies learned that, hey, we don't have to have big events. We don't have to have a big building in downtown San Francisco or Visalia or Bakersfield. We can have everyone work from home. So things are changing, and this just hyper accelerated everything. So as leaders, you got to figure out how to connect, especially with the old people who are kicking and screaming and the young ones who love it, but it's hard to wrangle them in and keep them motivated. So it's a challenge.
All right, thanks for that. I think that is it for the questions. Before we go, I would like to recognize all the volunteers who made this event happen, the committee, the Ag leadership staff, including Deanna Van Claveren and Judy Sparacino, who are behind the scenes making it all happen. I would also like to recognize Ian LeMay as he is incoming chair for the next year. I would also like to thank our sponsors, the speakers, and Valley PBS. But mostly, I would like to thank you, the viewer, for taking time to be with us here today. It's people like you that make organizations like this possible, and your support is necessary and appreciated. Thanks to you, the ag industry is positioned to face future challenges, whatever they may be. From Fresno, I'm Emily Rooney, wishing you a great day. Now back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Emily. We really appreciate your presence today. You brought a lot of great energy to our program. I would like to mention that the Foundation will provide a recording of the program on the Ag Leadership website for those who would like to revisit the program or for those who could not join us today. Before we wrap up, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the Breakfast Committee that plans and hosts this event. We have about 20 individuals consisting of past graduates that take great pride in offering a thoughtful and worthwhile program. Without their dedication and enthusiasm, this event would not be possible. Next year, I hope we'll be able to hold this event in person. And I hope we're able to embrace each other and continue with the tradition of establishing and maintaining the connections that we have made through ag leadership. Have a great day.